I was just like, is this worth it? So I went to the car and I looked up YouTube videos, and now I'm like, fuck, I need to get back there to try it on. Because really, it's not hard to maintain / fix that stuff up.
No, it's pretty easy.
Yeah, it's just like, I need some like duck grease or whatever it's called. It's like, it's a specific type of like oil grease that they use on it. And you just soak it in a cool bath and you scrub it with a stiff brush. And you just let it sit fucking dry. You just put it on a hanger. And then you rub it with duck stuff. And you're done.
Hell yeah.
And then you don't have to touch it for like 20 years again.
Yeah.
Unless you're a cowboy, and then you got to do it once like every... Well, what do they say? When it becomes stiff. It's so dirty it's stiff.
Well, yeah, when you're riding rough like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're riding rough on your cows and your boys.
I mean, when you're riding the boys hard like that, you gotta be careful about things getting stiff, I guess.
Speaking of getting stiff,
God damn it!
Hi and welcome to Blank Bodies, a Vampire the Masquerade V5 tabletop and horror podcast. I am your host, Hunter. I don't know why I'm talking like that.
Yeah.
And I'm joined by...
I am John.
You know, I knew I was walking right into it when I was saying that joke, but I was like, that's too obvious. Hunter won't start the episode there, surely.
Well, so...
when you die, you go through rigor mortis, you know what I mean?
Yeah, just real stiff.
Yeah.
No. So, what?
I started telling the story, and I saw a, movement in my peripherals, because I was looking at you, Sarah, and I thought the same thing. I was like, this isn't a story worth recording. He didn't press the record button. No chance.
No way. No shot. No cap.
Nope.
Yeah, we've been recording for like 2 minutes.
Hell yeah. So, for those who are listeners of our show, hello, hi, welcome, thank you. Sorry, hell year 2025 is what it is.
Yep.
But we are getting close to winding down towards the end of our Clan Deep Dive series. Woo! So, in preparation for that, we are starting some new Deep Dive series as CRSI.
Hey, where's that applause button you have?
Which one?
It's one of these. If I get it wrong, we're going to go with it. Hey.
Oh shit, he got it in one. I'm proud of you, bud.
I can't hear it at all.
It's very quiet. I think I turned the sound volume down, but I don't remember what knob it is. Is it maybe the fourth one?
No, let's find out. No.
Nope, it's still really quiet. Is it this?
Oh god, no.
I'm really scared it's going to be incredibly loud when we get to it.
It's playing, but it's quiet. I don't think our audience can hear it.
I mean, I can hear it in my headphones. I guess in post you could add it.
Yeah. Oh, it's got its own here.
Oh, Jesus
Yay!
Christ. Okay.
New deep dives!
Yay.
Woohoo!
All right, we're gonna stop the bit now. Why do you have these buttons?
I have more. There's a way to get more,
God.
but I don't remember how it works. I should probably learn how our equipment works.
Oh my!
I can put custom sounds on there too.
It's been 3 years.
I mean, how often do we really do I really need a sound effects board?
No.
Do you think that would improve?
Honestly,
or...
I don't know if it would make the show better or worse.
Truth.
But one of the new series we're going to be doing is a horror subgenre at the table series. Where we're going to talk about a subgenre of horror and how it works, and then how you can implement it at your World of Darkness table.
Huzzah!
So to kick us off, I decided to go with Gothic Horror.
Weird.
Yeah, it's almost like Nosferatu came out, and I went, well, the subgenre episode that I had lower on the list for later in the year, I'm just going to put that right at the top now, because it's topical.
Because it works.
Yeah.
Works good
it
style.
It just works. So there will also be a Patreon poll, with the 4 other options of subgenres of horror that you can select if you are a Patreon. You can go and click the vote buttons, because that is the only true form of democracy that any of us get to experience.
Yeah. I'm going to be putting together a poll, too. That's a surprise, because I haven't decided what's going to be on it.
Yes.
You don't know what's on it or what it's for, but someday you'll have a poll.
I'll have a poll. It's going to be up at some point.
John will have a
poll.
poll.
I'm going to be... do I announce that now? I don't know. I'm going to be doing the bonus episode for Zamitsi, because...
It's like your favorite.
It's my boys. And they're going to be... there's going to be some options on it.
Yeah, so keep your eyes peeled, peoples.
Do it.
So... the sub-genre series aims to highlight various aspects of the wider horror genre, give players and STs materials to pull for games, and share some media that is both rad and cool.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Any other notes? Oh, note. This episode, I am limiting the term the Gothic as a subgenre to its earliest forms up until about the mid-20th century.
Okay. So we're not counting malls in our Gothic.
If you want postmodern Gothic, go vote for it on the poll.
Okay.
There's one that'll be on the poll.
That's one you don't know about. There's 3 other mysteries.
Ooh.
So
I bet mystery's one of them too.
it is an option.
Ooh.
That's a very vague one, though. I feel like we'd have to pare that down a little bit.
Might have to pay. That's partially why I had to pare down Gothic, because I was like,
You
it's
could
like,
do, like-
oh yeah, I could just cover this real quick. It'll be fine. And then I was like, it's too big.
You could
There's
do
a
like
lot.
noir.
Mm-hmm.
I like noir. Is
Yeah.
noir horror?
It could
It
be.
can be.
I suppose so.
Some of it is.
Yeah.
It could be, but
Noir is a setup for giallo, which
Mhm.
is a type of horror.
Mm-hmm.
yes,
There's
there's a plethora of horror subtypes and flavors, and you can bring those to the table for funsies.
There's also a lot of mystery
Mm-hmm.
books, like the Sherlock Holmes films that were made by Hammer that flirt with horror.
Some of those were
Gothic
pretty
horror.
spooky.
Yeah.
I might talk
the
about
Hounds
that.
of Baskerville. That one was kind of spooky.
Might talk about that a bit today, even.
What?
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 Whoa!
All right, it's content warning. Cultural erasure, genocide, decay, drug use, eugenics, racism, assault, abuse, sexual assault, and child exploitation.
That's just a couple.
That's just a few.
That's just one or two.
Just-
Don't worry about
So
it.
if any of that's like too spicy
It's
for you, you can skip.
It's nothing that heavy.
That's fine. it's fine.
Just sounds like a trip to Iowa.
Oh no!
No, correct, but no.
I have a lot of family there. It's okay. I'm allowed to make fun of my people.
Iowans.
Yeah, it's a very Swedish state.
Okay, so the sources
Scandinavian.
for this episode is the book The Gothic by David Punter and Glennis Byron. Also, the internet article What is Gothic Horror Fiction by Moira Richard, and The Celtic Holocaust by Dan Carlin's Hardcore Histories.
I don't like how you were laughing at the title of that one.
I'm only giggling because it's just such a hard pivot right from the first 2.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's fine, guys. Don't worry about it. I also just really like Dan Carlin's Hardcore Histories. It's a good show. He do his research. It's fun. So, what is the genre? Basically, the term Gothic has been political the whole time.
Interesting.
It's been political the whole time.
The whole time.
Always has been.
Always has been. So anybody that's just like, I don't, I just like the fashion, or I just like the music, or I just like the books, and I have to make it political. I'm like, it's been political the whole time.
You started it.
You fucking dumbass. So, it started being political in the very beginning of time. We're going to jump to the 1st century BCE. History. So there's a text, some of you may have heard of it, called Germania by Tacitus. Tacitus is a very famous Roman historian.
I'm in.
All right.
Did he invent tactics?
No.
He should have.
He
He fucked up.
I don't know what the etymology is for tactics from Latin to English, but I feel like some of that might be
Fucky.
tied. I don't know. I'm not that kind of nerd. So Tacitus's documentation of the Goths who warred against the Roman Empire did note the Goths as being more egalitarian than the Romans, with the Goths having juries, representative government bodies, and a strong sense of liberty and justice.
What?
What?
Hey, hell yeah. Good job, guys.
And for those who are not aware or forget or don't remember, Northern Europe in ancient times was made up of several different types of tribes of peoples, including the Goths, the Swedes, the Danes, the Gales, the Picts, Norse, Saxons, Anglos, Franks, Rus, Celts, and many others.
Nice.
A lot of those we don't know like jack shit about because they got killed.
Yeah, that's part of the problem.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
while some peoples moved around and settled due to environmental and survival reasons over the centuries on the European continent, others were brutalized, enslaved, and slaughtered by the Roman Empire.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oops, I just got a little bit ahead.
Yeah. So, some thoughts that people have about, the Goths and the Vandals sacking Rome and all that shit. There's a lot of context we don't have because it was erased.
Womp womp.
I'll let you guys listen to that Dan Carlin's Hardcore Histories episode if you want that information. It's
That sounds fun.
fascinating. I don't know if fun's quite the right word because it is a genocide, but
Well, I mean, fun to listen to.
It gives a lot of interesting context to ancient history and also kind of context to now history and just being like, oh, we've just been people the whole time.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, amazing. It's like people are people. Wow. So moving on into the Dark Ages and the Renaissance, as we are wont to do. The Goths, as a people, did not leave literature, art, and buildings behind like their ancient Roman counterparts, which leaves their collective legacy as invaders in the minds of those who are more classically educated.
Do you suppose that is through the, like, sacking and, enslaving and slaughtering the Roman Empire was just like, let's kick this stuff down?
Yeah, that was part of it.
That's probably okay. Yeah.
That was part of it. There's also different forms of communication and writings that the Romans had that, like, the Germanic tribes would not have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you remember back to Clan episode, the last one, where we're just like, hey, the Vikings didn't have written language for the long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of other people also just didn't write shit down, like, in the same way that, like, the Romans and the Egyptians and the Greeks would,
right,
or the Persians.
Okay.
So that's part of the problem. That is a complicated anthropology thing, but yeah, basically that
Cool.
was nuance. But broad strokes, with the Renaissance putting a focus back on the classics of Greek and Roman empires, Italian scholars ascribe medieval architecture as quote-unquote Gothic, denoting it as unbalanced, irrational, and barbaric.
That shit looks beautiful.
I know.
The fuck are they talking about?
And they're just like, I don't like it. It's just...
It's got angles.
Yeah.
It's not a square.
Well, it's kind of the equivalent of, you know how, like, a lot of contemporary design people, they're, like, really into, like, Scandinavian minimalism. And they're like, I like clean lines. I like simple things. But my dumb ass is like, I like things in the 70s when everybody was on coke.
Give me conversation pits.
Give me conversation pits. I hate the big light.
Mm-hmm.
I like a lamp.
Mm-hmm.
That's just kind of giving a cool, like, vibe to a room.
Multiple lamps,
Mm-hmm.
if you want it to be bright.
Yeah.
Well, ideally, you have a setup for both.
Fuck the big
And
light.
then you put different tints of bulb in the big light versus the lamps.
If
So
I-
you
Or-
can control the vibe.
Mm.
Or you just get, like, an app to control the colors of your lamps.
Yeah, but I don't want my entire house connected to the internet.
Yeah.
That's fair, I suppose.
Like, I have a couple of strategic bulbs that are, like, Wi-Fi color changing.
Yeah.
And then other bulbs that I'm like, this is my designated, I need a bright light because I'm drawing.
Yeah.
But yeah, fuck the big light. I hate the big light. Me and all my homies hate the big light. But continuing on,
Are
Gothic.
we not homies?
We are homies.
I
You like the big light?
You like the
Yeah.
big light? When did you like the big
Depends-
light?
Depends what I'm doing.
Okay.
Hmm.
That's why I like if I'm in the kitchen, if I'm cooking, I like the big light. I like it
Mhm.
nice and bright. I like to see what I'm doing. If I'm doing like a project where I'm working,
Mm-hmm.
I like the big light. I like it to be bright.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm-
but if you're just vibing, you don't have the big light on.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
I like both. I like contrast.
Oh, which is good and important.
See, I like to have designated lamps. I have a lamp directly over my dishes
Mm-hmm.
because the big light betrays me. The big light is like directly behind me for my
Mm.
dishes. So when I have the big light on, it is actually darker in my dishes than when I don't have the big light on.
So, kind of a fun fact. The term Gothic becomes a label to describe something as uncivilized, uneducated, and convoluted and chaotic as early as the 1500s.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Gothic also becomes a term to describe all vaguely Germanic people, because by the Renaissance, they're just like, yeah, so we don't have any notes for these people that were in this part of Europe, and they're not, like, ancient Rome, so fuck that. They're all Goths, fuck them.
Nice.
All right then.
So that's why
I
we
am classically goth.
Yeah, so that's why we kind of have the idea of, like, oh, the Goths sacked Rome, and it's like, actually, yes, but no, these different tribes, it's complicated, but history's fun. It's almost like history is a story that is being repeated constantly and, has biases that you should, like, look into.
All right, sure.
Yeah.
I'll get right on that.
Yeah, the good news is I give you guys as my bias, like, immediately up front, so, hooray.
Ding ding.
Ding ding. Early modern period. During the Enlightenment and the rise of nationalism, there was a focused effort to find ties with democracy, justice, and other aligning principles to being essentially part of being European or a specific European nation state. So they're just like, okay, we're coming up with the idea of France. What does it mean to be French?
Okay.
And then they would trace back through, like, their ancient lineages and be like, yeah, we had, Charlemagne and all these things. And then these academic scholars in this time period were trying to trace, like, the Enlightenment principles of the day as being quintessentially what makes you European and civilized.
Sure.
So they're kind of reversing the Renaissance ideas on, like, Gothic stuff.
Right. Weird.
Yeah, well, there's, like, you get some kind of cool, like, it's like where the start of, like, archaeology and anthropology comes from, because people are like, hey, I'm digging in the dirt over here, and I keep finding these, like, ancient sculptures of, like, these really fat, titted ladies. What's that about?
What's going on?
I keep finding all these combs and pots. What is this? Why? Why is this important?
Right.
That kind of shit. Like, why would you spend the time to do this? Sorry. It's just, I am trying to condense like several hundreds of pages of reading I did into just like a haha bit, and I hope it's sticking.
Hell yeah.
We'll find out if it is. Also, with the rise of industrialization, pop culture as we kind of understand it begins through magazines and novels. And, starting in like the 1700s, 1800s. Like, it's fucking fascinating if you ever get a chance to go through like archival records to read like magazines where they have like the opinion section and listening to people complain about novels that are coming out because it just sounds like Marvel fanboy gripes.
Really?
Yeah, I'm like, people are people, man. It is so funny.
Love it.
Just like literature nerds just yelling at each other like through letters that they're sending to a newspaper.
Beautiful.
It's just like the slowest Twitter.
Love it.
It's so funny. But this also did prompt various artists in all sorts of media to express cultural anxieties around shifting lifestyles and new scientific understandings. Because they're just like, I'm having a feeling about a thing that's new and scary. I'm going to write about it or paint about it in my thing.
Right.
So, these two factors combined for Gothic literature and art to follow a subcultural space for the expression of and exploration into a wide variety of topics. These explorations range from shocking exploitation to sincere reverence on topics such as imperialism, gender expression, colonialism, evolution, class warfare, psychology, religion, and many other topics.
Pretty neat, actually.
Pretty neat. Yeah, it's one of those, like, some of these things kind of icky, because you're just like, essentializing biological groups of people of being like, well, we are inherently democratic because we're European. It's like,
that's kind of weird.
And then people outside of Europe are incapable of it and need to be, taught. I'm like, ooh, that's
kind of a problem.
Not a good take. But there are works within Gothic fiction that discuss these things and go, I think this might be bad, guys, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it not. Some of it's like, if the poor weren't poor, they wouldn't have malformed brains. They wouldn't do crime. And you're like, oh, God, what?
Well.
Holy shit. Sometimes having media analysis skills is good, in fact.
Then clearly the solution is to give them money.
You would think the solution would be give them money, therefore they're not poor anymore. But no, their answer is, well, you put them in jail so that they can have penance. They must go to the workhouse lest they become more poor. So, sometimes when you have genres that you like and care about, there's parts of it where you have to look at it and go, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Things can change over time, shockingly. So, major motifs within the Gothic genre. First big one, the castle. Just the castle.
It's there.
Yeah. Though the castle can exist as a literal castle. It can't just be ooky spooky Count Dracula castle.
Lightning strikes in the background.
Bats. Mm-hmm. That kind of shit. But this can also exist as a home, estate, asylum, workhouse, jungle, city, etc. Typically, what denotes the castle is a large space that has layers to it that allow subjects of the story to transgress from the mundane to the fantastical. It's a literary device. Usually, things that people experience with the castle is desubjectification, which is the process of losing one's sense of self and control. Links between past, present, and future. Challenges to salvation through systemic violence and mortality. And isolation and confinement. The labyrinthian structure of the quote-unquote castle traps while also being too big and complex for community or connection.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so that is the castle in Gothic.
So, okay.
Yeah.
As a... Oh, what fuck. What is that short story called? I'm blanking. The lady's in the room and she's staring at the wallpaper.
Yellow wallpaper.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The room is the castle in that, as an example for people.
And, for World of Darkness, it would be the fucking city your game is set in.
Yeah.
That is the castle.
Yeah.
And you can kind of wax and wane on, like, how strong of that is. Like, you can run an entire chronicle where the city is, like, almost a character unto itself, if you want.
I would say, specifically, the castle, very, very World of Darkness. Especially Vampire, but, like, pretty much all of them. Desubjugation just becoming a supernatural creature or learning about the supernatural. Like linking the past. Oh, there's a 500-year-old guy just shows up and he wants me dead.
There's beefs and schemes and just tragedies running around in the city that's been going on for centuries before you, and they'll go on centuries after you. All sorts of shit. Omens and...
Challenge to salvation. I mean, systemic violence is just being a vampire, period.
Or capitalism.
Yeah.
Or both. Oh, Ventru.
I was about to say, so Ventru.
The Ventru. So the next big motif is the monster.
Oh, well, this one's pretty obvious.
This one's pretty obvious, but a little note I wanted to make. So in older Gothic media, typically the monster is explored in what a 3-act structure of sorts, where there's you meet the monster, the monster is introduced. Okay. Second act, you witness the monster, do a thing, exist, cause havoc, just go blah, blah, blah.
Accidentally kill a little girl. Steal your wife. Yeah.
There's a lot of options. The monster could murder your chambermaid. There's a lot of options of the monster just existing and doing a thing.
Lots of stuff.
And then the third and final act is the monster is killed or contained, so order is restored.
Yeah, so like Frankenstein, the first third is him creating the monster and finding about what it is. Then the monster goes crazy in the castle and then escapes into society, and he does his thing. And then the end is them burning down the windmill with the monster in it.
Yeah. Or like, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, where Dr. Jekyll takes the potion, and then Hyde comes out and does things, many crimes. And then the end of the story is just Hyde is contained.
Yay!
That's a common thing in like older Gothic, like especially like Victorian Gothic. When you get into the more modern era, so newer Gothic, we kind of exist in a system of exploring the monster through sympathy or apathy. So either we relate to the monster as some sort of like tragic anti-hero, or the monster is an obtuse result of the horrors of society. So think like Dr. Lecter, Patrick Bateman, like their monstrosities are so just like bananas. Or Anton Yelchin in No Country for Old Men.
Never actually seen that.
Yeah, but yeah, those are like monster killers where like they're reprehensible. You're not supposed to like them. They're supposed to be bad. But like what we're supposed to be like having the horror about is not so much like the fact that they're monsters, but the society they exist in that allows them to function. And you just go,
cool.
Yeah. So that's how we handle the monster. And you can do all of that in various types of World of Darkness things. Just kind of depends on if you're doing like more of a monster. I feel like Monster of the Week tends to work better with the older Gothic handling of quote unquote the monster.
Yeah, you meet the new antagonist at Elysium, and then you're doing your thing, and you see him out doing something fucked up, and then in the third game, you're like, okay, now we got to stop him.
Yeah, he's been put into torpor. We've given him to the sheriff. Order as restored.
Huzzah!
Huzzah! Paranoia and transgressions, big motifs in Gothic media. Paranoia most often manifests as an outside force, such as a ghost, vampire, contagion, alienating labor, intoxication, experimentation, or as an internal force, such as de-evolution, subconscious desires, decay, madness, etc.
Nice.
So, usually, big part of the plot is either something outside of you is like coming to get you, it's gonna fuck with you in some sort of body horror, mental, psychological horror kind of way.
Very like House of Usher kind of thing.
Or it's an internal thing where it's like you're grappling with your own internal like wants and needs and, just like, I just gotta go killing again. And you gotta be like, no, I'm a good person. Or, various other tropes and things within that kind of reign. These forces can be natural or supernatural, but the force will put the characters up against disintegration of self and hope.
Great.
So whether it's external or internal, you're just like, am I a bad person? Am I gonna die? Is there any escape from this?
Do I deserve it?
Yeah!
Usually.
Maybe not. Maybe all of us are just doomed into the entropic cycle of life and death.
Womp womp.
Womp womp.
Sounds like a skill issue.
Rude! Alright. There's also, for transgressions, fears around the lack of stability or shifting expectations become highlighted, exaggerated, and symbolized in various ways through transgressions of taboos, physical forms, and mental state.
Right.
So, examples of body transgressions would be mechanization, de-evolution, decay, and concerns around sexuality. Transgressions of the mind include intoxication, subconscious desires, hallucinations, and identity crises. And then transgressions of the soul include alienation, death, and definitions. So that one's a little heady where you're starting to go like, but what is a man? Like, what makes you a human? What is a soul? Is there a god?
Right.
Is there a point to life?
Let's find out.
Let's find out in game. So yeah, you kind of have several tiers of just like, what kind of horror do you want to deal with within a Gothic context? Because you got a pretty wide swath of options, which is fun. But also, when you go to a buffet and there's a lot of options and you're just like, man, I don't know what to pick. There's like so many fucking options.
That's why you just get a little bit of all of it.
Yeah.
It's also difficult, I think, at a table when you have multiple players doing multiple things to try and touch on all of it at once. You kind of have to either just pick one and go with it and kind of add side stories for the character's individual fears and go with one that you liked for the story, or run a longer chronicle where you actually take time to kind of go after everyone individually, let's say.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, unless just for some reason everyone in the coterie is just like, we're afraid of our mortal soul and has it been lost? Unless you get lucky at a table like that, it's going to be kind of difficult to...
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's also some flexibility within, like, the Gothic horror subgenre where you could have a focus on, like, a body horror and just like the dealing with some sort of contagion or something, and then you can kind of sprinkle in some other just like little things now and again just to add to the atmosphere if you so desire.
Some implication.
Yeah.
See, you said Gothic and body horror, and my immediate thought was Flesh Cathedral.
Yeah.
I think that's...
The Flesh Cathedral could be the castle, Tina.
Yeah.
But also Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Body horror.
It is body horror, yeah.
Yeah, it's body horror, but it's also like this existential definition of like, what is a man? Like, is it the body, or is it actually like your consciousness?
Does it have a soul?
Does a soul even exist?
I feel like a lot of the classics explore a lot of these.
Yeah.
Honestly, which is kind of what you want.
Which is dope.
Yeah.
All right. Another big motif in Gothic horror is the uncanny.
I like.
So, idiosyncratic aspects appear in the narratives as direct elements or symbolic metaphors. So, key aspects with this would be repetition, mirroring, déjà vu, doppelgangers, coincidence, fate, omens, prophecy, animism, which is objects having some sort of spiritual, like, cognitive quality. Anthropomorphism, which kind of pushes that further into objects becoming people, or people relating to objects.
Like Pinocchio.
Yeah! Speaking of that, automatons, gender bending, claustrophobia, mazes and or labyrinths, burial, silence. The way this is described often is just like, there's like an eerie, like it's too quiet, like there's no noise.
You're in the middle of the woods, but there are no like birds chirping.
Yeah, you're like walking through a crypt and it's like the silence of the grave. That kind of thing. Yeah. Telepathy, hypnosis and mesmerism, altered consciousnesses, hallucinations, liminality, death, and specters and ghosts. Just, there's a wide plethora of things that just can like be put into a story or used as an element to make things seem off. It's kind of the best way to describe the uncanny, is just like you're in a normal below day-to-day life, and then suddenly you just keep seeing fucking crows.
Right.
Like, there's crows outside, there's like a little crow like emblem on a letterhead from a company you're getting hired for. There's like people wearing crow lapel pin. Like, you can't just get fucking away from crows.
Right.
And it turns out you're cursed to be a crow god.
Oh, damn.
Damn.
Actually, that sounds kind of cool.
Could be cool.
I don't think I'd have a problem with that.
Yeah, but you have to like give up your sense of self and autonomy to be the crow god, and you're no longer you anymore.
Instead, I am crow god.
Yeah.
It's kind of a subplot in Ravenloft.
Yeah.
Crow
Which is
people.
like a classic Gothic like adventure setting.
I would say it is like the tabletop Gothic horror setting.
Yeah. So there's lots of little things you can like sprinkle into a game if you're just like, I don't know how to make this like a Gothic horror. And I'm like, just start putting it, like, find things that players are doing and just start mirroring that and just adding doubles.
Yeah.
Or just being like, hey, you're doing this, like, this feels weirdly familiar, and then give no explanation ever again.
What? Why?
Why does this feel familiar? What's going on? What?
Don't know.
I don't know. Just figure it out in game, I guess.
Like it.
So here's where the little bit of the content warning comes in, and I'm sorry, everybody, we're going to be talking about abuse and violence. This is a big motif in Gothic horror. So I'm going to try to handle this as politely as possible. For you and your table, you can calibrate how intense you want these things to go. Cool?
Yes.
Cool. The Gothic genre allows for the exploration of these taboo issues in a detached manner. Some may find this cathartic, exploitative, exciting, or enlightening. The genre also widely varies on the morality of these acts of violence. Some are steeped in their time period and cultural context, unfortunately. Scenes and acts that may have read as morally gray in its time may read more horrific now. And horrifying scenes that may have been, spooky back in the day kind of read as a good for her moment now. And the tone is completely fucked.
Yeah.
So, depending on what material you wanted to pull for source material, just be ready. Some books get very just you're reading, you're like, oh, we're going through this spooky cathedral. What's that priest doing?
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna spend 2 chapters reading about this? 1 act?
Why?
Yeah, or you'll be reading it and they'll just offhandedly say something for 2 sentences and it's just the wildest shit and you're like, what the fuck why did this happen? Oh my god.
Or sometimes the opposite. Gothic horror will also sometimes suffer from what I call the Game of Thrones problem, where you'll be reading and you're like, nothing has happened. It's been 3 pages and we are still just describing how this room is decorated.
Yeah, it's been a lot of time setting up atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Which is cool, but sometimes you're like, please, someone just say hello.
Someone say anything, please. So, I did want to note, no piece of art or literature is worth ruining your mental or emotional health, so please take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Including your game. Including your own game.
But I like suffering.
That's fine. You're allowed to do that. But you know what you're getting into with your own suffering.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times I don't. I've heard this movie's extreme. Puts it on with no context.
We also like watching really fucked up movies.
Yeah, that was a lot of our friendship early on.
Mm-hmm.
This is true.
So, within Gothic horror, there is a wide range of social violence. This can happen with locations. Often these are places where violence is quote-unquote acceptable. It typically is hiding the acts of cruelty away from the general public. So the story is you going into these kind of forbidden locations to go find the horror within.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be places like dungeons, monasteries, convents, asylums, jails, quote unquote. I'm saying exotic locales. There's a lot of Gothic literature, which is Alan Quartermain Goes to the Orient kind of shit.
Mm-hmm.
Which I grew up in a lot of those Alan Quartermain books. I do love them. I love the action adventure. But there's also a lot of times where you're just
Oof.
There's oof, but I appreciate that there are moments where Alan Quartermain's like, am I a bad person? Hold on.
Good job, bud.
But he doesn't really process it beyond that. Just the pause of hold on. Well, I'm going to keep killing,
anyway.
I guess.
I get it. I read a lot of Tintin as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tintin is less extreme,
Mm-hmm.
but there's still just a lot of,
Whoops.
So, when it comes to abuse and violence with people, this violence is often done towards powerless individuals and groups. I'm going to specifically bring up that violence against women happens a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That is a triggering thing for you. Please take care of yourself. The most common motifs for this will be imprisonment and some sort of sexual violence. This ranges wildly from being horrific within the text to being weirdly titillating or both.
Yeah.
I
Also kind of depends on you.
Yeah, I'm not going to dissuade people from enjoying a dark romance within their own context and safety calibrations, and if you like a bodice ripper, pop off. But there's times if you're not in the brain space for it and you're just reading an old-timey Gothic horror book and then you'll be like, whoa, hold on, what?
Yeah, I think a softer way to do this would be the classic princess trapped in the tower.
That's a very common one, yeah.
Where it's not as extreme, and I feel like it's become such a common trope that it's a little softer to pitch at people, where it's oh, we have to rescue the fair maiden trapped in, and then we learn a little bit about her.
Yeah, it's
the Princess Peach scenario.
Yeah, the thing is, I think a lot of people forget, because they don't read a lot of these, especially the older books, how just blasé a lot of that kind of assault was. It just happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes in the text it being blamed on her or saying she was secretly into it. And I'm like, no, that's gross. That's terrible. So I wanted to be clear on hey guys, that's not good, but this happens in the texts. A lot more than you would think. So just be prepared.
Yeah, that sometimes is the horror of it too. So,
but yeah, there's also a lot of Gothic horror stories where like a terrible thing happens to a lady, and then she gets revenge as a ghost, or everyone goes, "Wow, that was terrible. You're a bad man."
Yeah.
Or there's a lot of also Gothic horror stories where the bad thing happens, everyone dies, the book's done, and you're just like, nothing good happened to anybody. Well.
Yep. There is a lot where they are almost written like a PSA, where it's like literally everyone dies, curtain falls. Don't invite Dracula to your country.
Yeah, just don't let the swarthy Greek guy into your house.
Yeah,
he's gonna fuck your wife and kill everyone. I've just spoiled the vampire by Polidori. There you go.
You just described like 90% of classic vampire media.
Yeah, just don't let the guy, the cool guy who looks like he knows how to use his tongue. Yeah, don't let him in your house. He's gonna fuck your wife and kill everyone. So, the other group of people that is often portrayed in Gothic horror as receivers of violence is children.
Yay!
No, it's bad.
Oh no!
Children are often used as symbols of innocence and are put up against the cruelty of systems. This is seen in like workhouses, street kids, orphans, battery and other assaults. A lot of you grew up with like Dickens, reading that shit.
Very Dickens.
Yeah, Dickens is Gothic horror, guys.
I was about to say Oliver.
Oliver, one of my favorite underrated Gothic horror movies, Young Sherlock Holmes. It pretty much starts.
Yeah. There's a lot of like shorter Dickens writing materials of that he pulled from like his own experiences of being like an impoverished child. And there's sometimes you're reading things and you go like, Charles, you okay?
Doing all right, bud?
Do you need to talk to somebody? We'll make you a cup of tea, bud. Like, fuck. But there was a whole movement simultaneous to like the boon and rise with Gothic literature of the realism movement, where they were trying to portray the horrors of portions of actual life like realistically,
right,
in an attempt to like fix society. And Charles Dickens was also part of that, so there was a bit of an overlap. So you have realism Gothic and like romantic Gothic,
right?
Woohoo!
Nice.
There's also unfortunately a group that I'm going to call quote unquote savages.
Oh boy.
Strap in, guys. I'm sorry.
Here we go.
So this is either indigenous peoples, the mentally ill, or the poor being depicted as too far removed from a quote-unquote civilized self, thus allowing for abuse from a narrative character or being the abuser themselves.
Very Malkavian.
Yeah, it's a lot of it has ick for a contemporary audience.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a whole lot of just, well, this person has like, you could tell they're a criminal because of the shape of the skull.
Right.
So therefore they're a beast and they're going to like ravage this person and they're inherently criminal. And I'm like, he's just Italian. Like, what the fuck? That's crazy. So there's a lot of like the ideas from like early eugenicists and that kind of thoughts kind of like creeps into this like pop culture stuff in ways that when you read it now you go, that's crazy, that's wild, or just be like, well, they're mad, so clearly they're just gonna like be a lunatic and murder everyone. I'm like,
no,
that's not how depression works. Like, you'd be too sad to get out of bed to begin with. Like, what the fuck? And I will say there is some Gothic media that does a good job of portraying like the violence that these marginalized groups overall do experience, and as a way of like, this is bad and we should do something about it. And the people who are doing these violence things are monsters, in fact. Sorry, I dropped my script. But there's also some media that is a little like, that didn't age well, so just be prepared if you go explore it. So the abusers that often appear in Gothic literature, there is the powerful. These are usually men who are powerful socially, either like aristocrats, businessmen, priests, parents, husbands, and or supernaturally powerful because they're a vampire or a werewolf or they're possessed by some demon. That's a very common trope. There's also the separated. These are usually male characters who suffer some sort of split within themselves. This is either due to mental illness, science gone awry, or some supernatural force.
Being possessed. Yes,
that could be one. There could be, you had a near-death experience and now you have a split in your psyche. There's the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. I've read some like Gothic horrors where the way that they're describing the separated person, it sounds like PTSD, but like in a very cartoonish, like not great way, but you know, ways where you're like, if you didn't know what that mental illness was,
right.
I see how you're writing this. Like schizophrenics come up often in Gothic horror in this kind of trope.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Even as someone who knows the scenario, like dealing with mental illness can be scary.
Oh, it is.
I
absolutely.
mean, I have family and friends who've suffered from different things, and like even knowing what's happening, it can still be terrifying. Even it's like they're gonna be fine. There's nothing we need to do. Just need to take a moment. It's still scary as hell.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's scary sometimes when someone that you care about essentially like splits and it becomes this like other entity for a period of time, and you're just like, I don't know what to do. It's still shaped like friends, so I guess I gotta wait.
Yeah.
And hope this doesn't go worse. Which, yeah, writing about that as a horror scenario I think is fine with
spooky.
Proper context, and it is spooky. But the last kind of abusive thing that comes up in Gothic tropes is systems, which becomes more common the closer we get to contemporary times. Like systemic violence isn't discussed as much in older Gothic media. That tends to be more symbolized within a like archetype character, like with a Lord Ruthven character from Polidori's The Vampire, where it's just like, the aristocratic class is going to come to the middle class and like fuck your wife and steal all your shit.
Right.
But in like more modern Gothic horrors, you would have like some vague evil corporation, or you know, other options I had written was like industrialized labor corporations, military industrial complexes, medical services, capitalism. These like systemic entities become so large and complex they've become like a castle almost in their own right. We're back in the building again, boys.
Oh, no.
Oh,
We never left.
We're back in the castle again. No, we can never escape the castle.
It's labyrinthian.
Yeah, it is in our past and our futures.
Oh no.
Oh no. Sorry, I thought that was going somewhere. I apologize.
What?
Hunter got lost in the labyrinth of his mind.
That's true. It is a treacherous place in there.
That's very true. So I made up a list. I realized that maybe I marked down too many books of examples of Gothic media. I'm gonna skip some of these. I apologize. This list that I made is absolutely not an exhaustive list. I tried to grab some notable tentpoles of novels that I feel like fit the genre and cover like the time frame that I am talking about. Many of these novels exist as audiobooks and have been made into film and television series. So if you don't want to read a book, you can go watch a book.
Here's what I think. There's a couple we mentioned already.
Yeah.
We can skip those.
Yeah,
Talk about the new ones.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna like
Just
talk about them. I was just gonna name check these, and if there's any we wanted to talk about more seriously, I'm down.
That's fair, because I was saying we've already kind of name dropped.
Yeah.
Like, I would say like at least a third of these.
Yeah. So I'm gonna mention what's purported to be the first Gothic horror novel, which is The Castle of Otranto from 1764 by Horace Walpole.
Oh,
interesting.
Hell yeah, man. Good job. Thanks.
It is a book from the 1700s.
So watch out for that.
It is just, if you're not used to reading English that's like in that like language type, it's a little just like, what the fuck?
It can be difficult. When I went through my getting into and reading a lot of Lovecraft, I was like, I'm going to read some of the authors that inspired him. And then I was like, oh
boy. Yeah.
I enjoyed it, but I was let's just say Lovecraft is very easy to read. A lot of the people he liked were not very easy to read.
No.
If you're not used to reading shit like that, it's a little like, woof. But sometimes it's fun to just deal with like the fun flowery language and you learn some new words and you're like, oh, this is great.
I'm going to ruin my vocabulary forever.
Yeah. So we talked about Frankenstein. We've mentioned Oliver Twist. I do name drop the Mask of the Red Death by Edgar Allan Poe. Pretty much all of Poe's work.
Very goth.
The Hammer movie is very good.
Fuck yeah. It's dope as fuck.
Pretty much anything we mention, if there's a Hammer version of it, worth watching if you're not a big reader.
Yeah. I do drop Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. It's like one of my favorite novels. I love it.
I need to read that. That's a big one.
Same.
There's supposed to be a new remake of it, and there's already some controversy about the casting.
Oh boy.
There's
always controversy.
Well, in this case, okay, so like Heathcliff is described as like a melanated person, and they're not putting a melanated person in the film because he's like supposed to be Roma.
Oh, okay then.
Yeah, and everyone's like, why did you not hire a Roma person to play Heathcliff? That's fucking weird.
That's like the whole point.
That's like a big chunk of it, yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't read it, and I know at least that much.
There's also Carmilla by Sheridan Le Fanu. Go read Carmilla. It's Dracula, but for lesbians.
Yeah.
King Solomon's Mines by Richard Haggard's kind of a dope one. I've already mentioned Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
Ooh.
The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Peak. There's also kind of fun thing. There's been a re-release of The Picture of Dorian Gray that is the original manuscript from Oscar Wilde, the way he wanted it printed out, but all of the texts that the publishers censored out because it was too gay, they leave in, but they're highlighted, so you know what got, like, X'd out.
Interesting.
Which is dope as
Cool.
fuck, and I really want to get a copy of that book. I already mentioned The Yellow Wallpaper. There's The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells, if you want weird sci-fi shit.
H.G. Wells in general.
Generously. I got The Dracula. The Turn to the Screw by Henry James.
That's a good one.
That one's good. Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. And Heart of Darkness is a big inspo for Apocalypse Now.
I haven't read Heart of Darkness, but I know it's very influential.
It's very influential. It's very good. I recommend it. There is just all of the Sherlock Holmes series by Arthur Conan Doyle. I wasn't going to list it all. There's too much. But he wrote that up until like 1927.
Damn.
So weirdly contemporary, which is dope as fuck. Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. I do enjoy that book. It's really good. There's a lot. It's a heavy book. A lot of things. That is an adult content book.
Ah, okay.
But
it's
it is
a cool name. I really like the title of that book.
That one and Other Voices, Other Rooms by Truman Capote. Those are both, like, I would call them, like, Southern Gothic.
Cool.
I've not read any Capote.
Honestly, I enjoy it. The Other Voices, Other Rooms, very gay. There's also Psycho by Robert Bloch. And then The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. It's kind of where I'm wrapping the classic Gothic TM.
Cool.
Because once you get past, like, 1960, we get really into, like, the postmodern and a bunch of different changes that happen to the Gothic media. A lot of it is because of Stephen King and Clive Barker. So I was just like, Gothic media takes such a pivot during the 60s and 70s that I was like, I have to cut it.
Thank you, cocaine.
If you want...
I mean...
If you want 60s Gothic media, I would say you'd be better off going, again, with, like, Hammer. They kind of pick up where the novels stop because they are interpreting a lot of these stories and expanding upon them. And they do have a lot of 60s flair, especially in the later end of their run, but...
Well, also, like, when you're dealing with 50s into 60s, like, Gothic media, like, it gets picked up by, like, film and then television, and the popularity of, like, what was termed, like, the universal, like, classic monsters, like, that kind of style of Gothic falls out of favor. So you end up with this, like, return to Gothic sci-fi.
Yeah.
But instead of having the Frankenstein monster, there's a lot of, like, Cold War fears that they put into, like, aliens and robots and automatons and, like, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, that kind of stuff.
And you're also at the same time getting... Like, I don't know if I'd recommend actually watching it, but that's like when Dark Shadows was happening, and then you also have just like all the TV, like the Night Gallery kind of picks up that Gothic flair and modernizes it a lot.
Twilight Zone.
Twilight Zone can also just be really sci-fi, but...
Yeah, well, there's like a lot of Gothic horror that is like sci-fi starts with fucking Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which is a Gothic horror novel. Yes. Sci-fi starts from Gothic horror. I will die on this fucking hill.
That's fair. H.G. Wells, pretty much everything he wrote is sci-fi Gothic horror.
Sci-fi nerds will get mad for me, but I'm like, no. Sci-fi is a subgenre of Gothic horror. Fuck off.
Really, the only way I would separate that is if you're getting into the type of sci-fi that's more like people just like guessing what science is going to be like, and they're not even afraid of it. Like that kind of sci-fi where it's just like, this is what a beautiful society will be like when we live on the moon.
Yeah.
Like, that's not really even horror.
Yeah, that's like when you're getting into, like, utopian fiction.
Yeah.
Which I'll have opinions about later. So that's kind of my crash course on, like, Gothic as a genre, some sources. So I think if you're doing Gothic horror at the table as a player.
Oh, I had one more
Yes,
suggestion.
what's
just
up?
to wrap all this up, because that is a lot of books.
That's a lot of books.
That's more books than you would read if you took a class on Gothic Horror. If you want a really quick crash course through this and then maybe pick the things that you think we're interested to go with, go watch the TV show Penny Dreadful, at least the first couple seasons. It's kind of... I'm sure you've encountered most of these stories anyway, but it kind of just takes all those characters and puts them together into one big horror story.
Okay.
It kind of falls apart later on, but the first couple seasons are really fun.
So you're actually you're introduced to at least the idea of these characters.
You meet these characters, and these characters are like kind of forced to interact with each other. Some of them, it's really fun.
Okay.
It is a little corny, but it's a Gothic horror show. So of course it's going to be
Gothic
a little...
things tend to be a little cheeseball.
A little bit.
Little cheeseball.
I mean, I think that's part of the fun of it, but I think that's a good... I have the brain space to watch a TV show, not read a classic literature book.
Well, the cool thing is a lot of these classic literature books, a lot of them are short, too, because a lot of them are in the public domain. People just do their own audiobooks of them on YouTube.
Yeah, there's our podcast apps I used to listen to. You can look up, like, any Lovecraft story, any of these. Just type it into your podcast app, and there's probably just some dude reading it.
I know for sure on Spotify, there's a whole series of Vincent Price and Rathbone reading through the works of Edgar Allan Poe. It's a vibe.
Hell yeah.
Also, the YouTube channel Horror Babble has a bunch of people that come and read like classic literature and a lot of Lovecraft stuff. I was trying to leave Lovecraft out of Gothic just because it falls into like cosmic horror so hard.
And sci-fi.
He's weird.
He kind of like... He's in that like transition period where I'm like, I kind of would more want to put him into postmodern almost.
He's like the start of postmodern. He's also, even for his time, he was kind of a throwback author. Yeah. Like, he's weird. He's kind of doing his own thing, but it's not completely unique. I love him. Yeah. His writing, but like...
he sucks.
Yeah. Not even for like the obvious reasons. He's just kind of an annoying dork. But like... Yeah, he wrote some good books. Yeah, true. I wouldn't hang out with him.
Fair.
Like, and I mean, I think he spanned a lot of stuff because he had things anywhere from like, what was it, The Book in the House, where it's just like a dude gets stuck in a storm and goes into this house for some shelter, and there's a creepy old man there that's talking about the time he had to cannibalize somebody, and then he notices there's a book there and it's got pictures of people being cannibalized. What is that? That's blood on the book. Where's it? Oh shit, that's coming from the ceiling. It's pretty goth. Yeah. You know, it's very isolating, like we were talking about, and very like, there's the monster. There isn't really much of a solution at the end of that one. But, I mean, he goes anywhere from there to like, you know, Dagon.
Yeah, it's just... Gothic media covers... It's such a big tentpole, and it covers a lot of, like... There's, like, little subgenres within Gothic horror. I was like, let me just cover the tentpoles, and then we can get smaller from there.
We could do a whole Lovecraft episode if we wanted to. Like, oh, yeah. Because also people don't really talk about, like, his dreamland cycles, which are basically just him writing, like, his idea of, like, beautiful poetry of, like, a dreaming world. And it's not even really scary or anything, and then, like, but that's just...
And all the stuff he ghost wrote for people. He wrote so much as a ghostwriter.
And then I'm over here just like, I fucking love Jane Eyre. Fucking love that shit. This is like, this woman just autistic as shit.
Let's go.
Tell this man to fuck off. It's great. That's a novel where you're just like, girl boss, yes. But also spooky things happen. Oh no.
Yeah. I mean, oh no.
Yeah.
What's the TV show about? It's kind of that theme. It's about like, I believe the Russian princess who gets married.
The Great.
Yeah, that show was really fun.
Oh, that show's great. Based on Catherine the Great. It's a comedy that covers like the Catherine the Great like historical situations, but it's done in a fun haha way. Neat. Also, Nicholas Hoult is in it, so if you liked him in Nosferatu, you might like him in The Great.
All right.
He's a fucking psycho in that series. Jesus Christ.
He's good at being a psycho.
He's really good at it. He's also kind of got a lot of wet cat energy, which is like perfect.
Okay.
What?
I don't know how to interpret that, but I like it.
He's just like a sad wet cat.
Okay.
You're just like, I'm just gonna pick him up and hopefully make things better, I guess.
I see. Turn off a little. Gotcha.
Yeah, get him a tube.
Okay.
Yeah. So back to what I was trying to pivot to. I'm so sorry, guys. We're nerds that get excited about media. So, if you're wanting to portray Gothic horror subgenre as a player, what would be things that you guys would think would be good idea?
So I think we've given all these examples. I think taking one of these tentpole like themes and basing your character around that is like the best start. Like, what is your character afraid of specifically? Like, what is their fear, or which of these fears do they exemplify? And maybe pick one of each. Because you are a monster just as much as you are a character. You're sympathetic, but you're also a terrible fucking monster who's making the world a worse place just by existing.
Yeah, World of Darkness is a gothic punk genre, as said by the publishers, and I've waxed poetic about for way too long. I would say more times than not, I think it's good if you're wanting to specifically like genreify your characters, find an issue or some sort of motif that your character's like, that's their thing. And then you can kind of build around that. So you're like, okay, so if your character's wanting to have issues against like, I'm just going to say capitalism. I'm just going to make it easy. It's like, what would be their version of the castle? And then be like, okay, cool. If their castle is Elysium and they just can't escape the dumb court bullshit and they're just constantly getting pulled into the intrigue of that and all that nonsense, it's like, okay, are they haunted by something? Is there literally a ghost? Is it figuratively a ghost? Do we want to have repetitions on things? Do you want your character to like walk through rooms in Elysium and then like keep walking through rooms and kind of House of Leaves it? Is there a thing that they consider to be an omen and a portent of doom that you just want to like waggle over them that you find interesting? Do you just want them to be a sad waif? Fucking Gothic media fucking loves a sad waif.
Always.
That's just constantly screaming.
Yeah, I mean, I think for an example, my character from our live play we did for Halloween tour started out as kind of a joke character, like the libertarian vampire.
It's so funny though.
But like, I think he fits into these themes really well. I mean, being libertarian, the free man on the land kind of conspiracy guy, I think his fear is absolutely desubjectification. It fits perfectly into losing oneself of control. Yeah, it's fear that the world around him has any type of input or control on him whatsoever, and so he's based his entire life on trying to escape a system he'll never really be able to get to, whether it's the U.S. government's financial system or like the Camarilla and Vampire Society. Yeah, and so he's kind of trapped in that castle.
Yeah, I being storyteller for that would be like, oh, he wants his independence? The Ventrue are never going to let him have that. They're like, yeah, we see you ponied up and bought your way into being a vampire, which is crazy.
I mean, great job, but...
That's cool. We love that energy. You think... You bought in, buddy. You think you're getting out? You bought in.
Right.
And just constantly, like, pulling that fucking...
Essentially a leash.
Pulling that leash in until, like, he's just, like, stuck in the cogs of the machine.
Yeah, I think that story is him succeedingly escaping the subjugation of like government and human society and falling into subjugation of a much stronger, more terrifying society. It's like, I got out and it's worse out here, actually.
I'm back in the fucking building again.
Yeah.
I can't escape this maze.
And I think as far as him being, like, a monster himself, I think he literally just is the monster. Like, I don't think he fits a lot of the others. I think he's literally just willing to do anything. He is, though, I will destroy everything around me to escape the inescapable. Yeah. Like, the Frankenstein monster rampaging through the city. Kind of. Basically how that adventure ended, with him frenzying and just charging at the enemy.
Yeah.
He's also just all fortitude.
All fortitude.
He's all fort.
Punch me, I don't care.
I dare you.
I feel like if we're going with those characters, I feel like Sergei, we're all in the Gothic genre regardless. Yeah. But I mean, like, obvious the monster, right? I mean...
With your little anglerfish teeth.
Anglerfish teeth. Yeah,
all
look
fucked
at
up.
him. But it's also one of those, like, it feels kind of systemic where he's, like, he feels forced into this role of, well, the only way I can prove that I'm actually worth fucking anything beyond being a monster is pushing this violence that the power structure uses to corral everybody else. if I can prove that I'm really fucking good at that, then they'll actually give me any sort of autonomy and respect.
Mm-hmm. And the answer is you're never going to get it.
Yeah, right.
You're never
It's
going to get it.
never going to happen.
Yeah, it's just like,
you can
these
do the
people
most
think...
monstrous things ever, and they don't care.
Yeah, and that does delve into some of like the very Victorian fears of, because this was a society that was just like first grappling with Darwinist evolution theory. They're trying to wrap their brains around societally around not only like their physical form genuinely actually has no meaning. It's just a random happenstance of thumbs worked, so we just kept fucking to get more thumbs. Yeah. So it just like stripped a lot of just the essentiality of what being a human is, and they're just like, well, I guess you could just be a fucking freak. Mm-hmm. So there was like a giant pushback against that, and pushing in a lot of like health culture, and a lot of part of the reason why eugenics picked up and became popular was just a lot of this like reactionary freak out to there is no God, there's no design, we're all fucked, we're alone in the universe. Maybe if I do enough sit-ups, I'll have a sense of control in my life.
Right.
Which I know people laugh at now and go like, that was very silly, but like we're kind of going through that now with a lot of people having to accept how like AI is being sold to us and how it might be implemented and that kind of thing. So now it's just like, well, because, you know, there's people that are like, well, what's the point of me going into debt to go to school for a job when robots will do job? Mm-hmm. And all sorts of just we're just starting to go down that rabbit hole of just being like, but what does it mean to be a person if this guy can spend $175,000 to get like a fuck robot that has an AI personality and he can just swap it out whenever he decides?
Womp womp.
And my answer to that is, you can never buy being cool. That will never fucking happen.
It's true.
You can earn cool.
Look at Elon.
Exactly. I'm gonna dunk on that man forever. I'm gonna fuck.
My family wants a meeting with you, Mus.
But yeah, like I like that Sergei does fit into the Gothic tropes of like the horror of potential like de-evolution. It's like humans have evolved to this like pinnacle of society and things, and then the Nosferatu as a clan just stands there in kind of like physical opposition of like, no, we are always beast. Beast is what we will become yet again. And then just poor Sergei just being like, I have to uphold the law, but I look like a little fucking freak.
Here we go.
And a character of any clan can really touch on any of
so
these.
many
of
these.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, I think some of them are directly written to touch on these things, but it doesn't mean your Malkavian has to be like has to be directly related to the mind. That doesn't have to be their main fear. Like, you don't have your Nosferatu doesn't have to be a body horror character necessarily.
Yeah.
Like, you can that'll definitely be an element to incorporate, but that doesn't have to be their main focus either.
Well, like a lot of the Gothic horror fears around like the mind was also society starting to grapple with subjectivity, and also just the beginnings of like psychology as a science.
Right.
So they're just like, oh well, is the soul just brain? Is the brain just meat? Or is there more to us with like the Freudian Jungian collective unconsciousness? All of that.
That, I would say, is probably one of the hardest to touch on in World of Darkness without getting really deep into the lore and the cross splats and stuff. It gets really messy very quick. So if you are going to either have to get real deep into that, or you're going to say, we're just doing vampires.
Well, like, if you want to do it with just vampires and play with that in a way, like, I as a storyteller would be like, okay, cool, as long as everybody's comfy with it. I might make dominate like the discipline and how it's used be something that like an NPC that the characters care about is something they're having to grapple with, because it's like, well, how much of this person is actually them and how much of it is like their mind just being erased and altered and changed by whatever other character constantly, and it's like, is this person themselves anymore?
Right. Or have they been kind of
overwritten, and is this a new person? Is this really your friend anymore? Like, once you blank out enough memories,
right,
like, who is this?
Right.
Which, for me, that's more terrifying.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, that's horrifying. I don't like that shit.
And that gets down into the uncanny, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to handle it because World of Darkness is so big, some of those questions it does just give you answers for. By the time you're having to deal with Wraith and Mage and things like that, or even Werewolf, the game will just give you an answer. Like, yeah, Jesus exists, here's his stat sheet. Yeah, here's... Yes, the soul is actually this kind of thing, and it goes here when you die, unless you did this, and then you become that. And it's just a little bit having an answer to those questions is how you end a story, usually. So just be careful of that if you are doing a cross-splat, or if you're playing with people who have played World of Darkness for a very long time and played multiple of the splats, and they know things. It can be a little bit of...
They're like, I have the answers, and I'm like, do you, though?
Does your character?
Well, I'd also just be like, World of Darkness is also a game system that's written with a lot of, unreliable narrators. And I'd be like, yeah, that's the information you have.
There's that. And there's also just I haven't read that book, so it's not canon to this game. That's a good answer, too. Or just not in my table. Yeah. Are both good answers.
Like, not for this story at this moment. If you want to tell that story at your own table in your own time, by all means, pop off, sis. I think as a storyteller, if you're wanting to tell a Gothic chronicle, I think the biggest thing is making sure you're hitting the uncanny spooky tone.
Yes.
You're gonna want to invest in getting the tone for your city and your setting correct. I think that's the biggest vibe.
Yeah.
Because if you can establish that buy-in really hard early, everything else is gonna fall into place very nicely. Which is kind of dope. So, trying to figure out what about the city and setting is what about the city is actually the castle, what is the monster, where does the paranoia build and set. Once you get those kind of answers figured out, everything else slots in just which is fantastic, and I love that shit, and I will forever tell you guys the homesteading rules in the Chicago by Night V5 books. That is so good for just, tacking on and yes-anding things that players are exploring the city once they, get familiar with an area. If they've clocked a certain vibe for an area, give them that little bonus for the space. And then they'll kind of get them more invested in exploring the castle and learning more about things. And then you can just make it bigger and weirder.
And if you're building locations for your players to go to, you can also throw some of that stuff on there just to give it more character, to make it stand out for the players go, oh, there's something here.
Yeah.
Yeah, if for some reason you go to, I fucking don't know, the local Goodwill, and your Hakata, for some reason, decides to do some sort of Oblivion ritual, and you go, okay, you get 1+1 die. And they're like, why? Because they might mark down that Goodwill on their map. Okay, that's weird. Why?
Yeah, and I think also, especially once you get the background of reading some, Gothic literature, using the descriptors that they use for, haunted manors and, abandoned abbeys and, ruined castles, using those descriptors to describe part of your city just adds such a vibe.
Right.
Using your example of going to the Goodwill, I might describe, the ceiling having the industrial, vaulted ribs of, you would see in a cathedral. Just, adding those parallels.
Right.
Kind of helps people, get into the mood.
Right. For some reason, the Goodwill's music isn't playing, so you can hear everyone walking around.
Or, you know what? Even if you just kind of want a visual representation, I would say a lot of 90s films really hit that vibe. Go watch the 90s Batman movies, go watch The Crow, go watch Dark City. There is a lot of movies from that era where, the city is a character and it is massive and terrifying, and it definitely hits those, Gothic tones.
Hell,
very well.
I'd even say the newer Batman with Bat-Pat.
Yeah, they do a pretty good job,
the way
too.
the city that is set up in that is, I think, hits a lot of really good parallels to Gothic descriptions of quote unquote the castle for the city.
It's big, it's imposing, it's
yeah, there's a lot of deep shadows, there's a lot of recesses, there's a lot of corners and places for people to hide. There's just scenes where you see characters walking through cities and there's just things happening in the background constantly that are just so quick, but you just know something not good's happening there, and you're just kind of I'm gonna keep it pushing.
I mean,
just not gonna look.
There's a reason it's called Arkham.
Yeah.
It's very... Batman is, at times, is surprisingly very Lovecraft inspired.
Which is super fun.
Yes.
So, yeah, those would be kind of my big tidbits if you really want to push the Gothic. It's not just I'm gonna whack on the Crow soundtrack and be like, yeah, you guys are in a building, everything's wet because it's raining. I'm like, you can add a little bit more flourish to it. And Gothic doesn't necessarily have to be, froofy, poet shirt.
No, I was thinking, honestly, of a good example of, the castle would be, you're going down into the Warrens to hunt for Nick Tuku.
Yeah.
And, the oppression of, the darkness and the echoing of your footsteps and the skittering and all that.
You hear water rushing, but you don't see it, so you know, something's happening.
Right.
That could be super fun. You could have Toreadors that have these really immaculate big houses, but there's this one corridor that's dim and there's a locked door for some reason and you hear skittering and that's all that you get. And I'm like, I don't like this. Where's this going? I need to leave. And now they're obsessed with you because you touched the door.
They've been breeding spiders, you see, for their size.
I think it's a bit more modern Gothic than traditional Gothic, but I mean, just touching on that and the it's too clean, it's too perfect. The Patrick Bateman type of he's just too well put together.
Well, that's getting into the uncanny.
Yeah.
Because you're, with at least the example with, Patrick Bateman, especially in the American Psycho film, everything is too clean, but there's also the use of mirrors, because everything's, too shiny. There's a lot of reflective things. The axe is too clean. Yeah. There's, a lot of repeated... And he also deals with a lot of mirroring and repeated motifs, because he's constantly getting confused for, other coworkers, and all of the guys in that office look kind of the same. So you can kind of do a similar thing where, you just have a group of people that are antagonists to your character's coterie and they just keep kind of all looking vaguely the same, or one of them starts to mirror one of the guys in your pack and starts dressing the same and listening to the same music and hunting in the same places. And just
go away.
I don't like it. Where is this going?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's our first step into is horror subgenres at tables, things you can look into and things to consider when you're writing and planning your games.
Yeah.
The poll will be up so we can delve further into smaller, nicher, weirder subgenres and how to tweak World of Darkness as a system into ways that could be fun to explore for you and your friends.
Yeah.
Because there's lots of different horror flavors that we can explore together.
Many.
That's generally how I start writing my games. I know we talked about doing it in a whole episode, and we've had people ask about how we approach writing a chronicle or a story or one shot or whatever.
It is on the list for this year.
Ooh. But I mean, minor spoiler, that's kind of how I start, is I just pick a horror genre and I'll dive into that for a while and then pick things I like. So if you're going for Gothic, definitely read or watch the movies. Or
You can definitely find audiobooks at your library. We support the library.
Go to the library.
Read the books.
Go to the library.
Get educated. If you read more books, people want to have sex with you.
Go to the library.
Don't have sex at the library, please. That's how you get thrown out of the library.
Also, be picky about the books. I know Sarah made a very large statement. Some of the books I read, I don't know if any might be more of a detractor than a attractor.
Look, I'm definitely an advocate for the John Waters rule of if you go to somebody's house and there's no books, don't fuck them.
That's fair.
I like that.
I'm that's such a good rule of thumb. It's gotten me out of so many bad dates.
Nice.
Where I'm just do you read? And they're not really. And I'm all right, I gotta...
Bye.
I am wrapping up this coffee date immediately.
If they don't at least say, I try.
Yeah, I'll accept it, I try, because sometimes the ADHD squirrels, nightmares.
I have to read 3 books at a time. So my way around that is I find a group of books on the same topic, and then I can kind of bounce through them.
I'm somebody that's especially because of this show and me going to college.
I either read a book in a day, or I read 3 books over the course of a month.
Yeah, I'm typically reading... I'm getting through a book a week. Sometimes that will be a singular book will be finished, or I will be reading 70 pages of 5 different books.
If I have a reason to read a book, different. I can just get through it. If there's any outside pressure or reason whatsoever, I'm writing an episode for the show.
Yeah.
we're going to talk about something that I was going to read for prep.
Mhm.
That I can do. When I'm just reading for my own fun or whatever, that's when it's just like, oh yeah, I started that 3 weeks ago. Let's read chapter 2.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because of the show, my for fun reading has now turned into I did drop the money to buy the academic media analysis book about torture porn.
Nice. Nice.
I found it on sale.
Nice.
It was only $100.
Only.
I love academic texts.
Just fucking, it's out of print, guys. Like, that was the cheapest I'm ever gonna see it again. I had to go for it. Anyways, thanks Paralyze for the music.
Yeah, thank you.
Your music's cool. It is on Bandcamp. Give them dollary dues.
Yeah.
We are on Instagram at Blank Bodies Pod. We are on Blue Sky at Blank Bodies. At time of recording, I don't know if we'll have TikTok. We'll find out. If we are, it's at Blank Bodies Podcast.
Check us out. If
we're allowed to have it, it's gonna get fucking. I'm gonna get weird with it.
Let's go.
Let's go.
I already got a little
weird on Blue Sky.
No,
I'm here
I'm
for
just
it.
going for it.
Hell
at this
yeah.
point.
Yeah. We do have a Patreon if you appreciate the work that we do and you want to give us a couple of dollar dues for support. We'd appreciate that. Different tiers give you access to things on the community Discord, which you should join because it's cool.
It's fun and free.
It's fun, it's free. We got a couple of hidey holes for the patrons for things for giving us their support, which includes me doing the master research document citation process. Holy shit, guys! It's 18 pages. It's only gonna get bigger. It's only gonna get bigger. I do too much for things. You pay me, please, so I can keep doing this. Anyways, we do have an interview series. If you have a cool project and you want to share it with us in our community, we are happy to hear about it. Could be LARPs, could be actual plays. If you're writing a game independently, if you do music, art, we would love to talk to you about your cool stuff.
Yeah, blankbodies@gmail.com.
If you're a real
vampire, just hit me up.
Yeah.
Real vampires.
Blankbodies@gmail. Hit us up. Is there anything else at the moment?
No, I think we're good.
Hell yeah, we did it.
Good job, us.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Mwah.